Okay, we're having a look at different mediums here and little things that I do in the class. That's just pencil work with a little bit of colour behind it. The humble egg. Coloured pencil, that's pastel there. We've got pastels that I've done outdoors. This is a half done pastel. I like to leave them like that sometimes so people can see the transition. This is an acrylic painting, coloured pencils. Various things up. This is some of my garden, which is wonderful. This one's called The Spirit of Bathurst. This is an interesting piece, which is acrylic paint painted on a 7-foot long cross-cut saw, which was spectacular, and that was a gift for a 21-year-old young man that place was his grandfather's. These are some of the beautiful puppies I had growing out of my fence. That's the demo that I do before I take it to the class so they can sort of copy what I've done. All those lovely red poppies. Here we have various bits and pieces around Bathurst because of its beautiful scenery and landscape. This is a hot afternoon in acrylic down at the river here, Sunday afternoon down at the river. Seagulls on a rock. My favourite things are traditional painting. I started off as a sign writer and a ticket writer, so I have a leaning towards fine work and beautiful traditional stuff. But I fell in love with the Bathurst landscape. This is down at Wallachia. We had a horse property, and that's looking up to Warragamba. That's an oil painting. This is oils. Beach scene at Tuncurry, which is acrylic. That's a scene from the Trig Point at Grenfell. And over here we have one of the Bathurst possums that I've done in acrylic. This is a Hen and Chicken Lane in Bathurst, which is an acrylic painting. And this is a lovely scene out at Wiseman's Creek near Oberon, which is pastel. Oil paintings up here, those two are unfinished. Now I do nice fine work, which I love. This is ink. Transparent ink and fine pen work. Little things like this, things you see every day, your boots and everything. This is what I teach the students, to just do things they're familiar with to start with. My first love is landscape, and then it goes still life. I start everybody off with a pencil because if you can't manipulate the humble pencil, you certainly won't do much more. So I've got some photos here I've taken as I've progressed through paintings. Because this was a beach scene and the sky and water's blue, I used blue pastel paper. This one, an autumn scene down from the bridge at Eglinton. I used a brown paper for the background for autumn. And this lovely scene from Flat Rock, I looked at the rocks and saw them as a lovely lilac mauve colour. And the one thing that holds throughout with paintings and anything opaque, I establish my darkest darks straight away and my brightest lights. Then I can judge all the tones of colour in between, which makes it very simple. And you'll see that in all these. Again, darkest darks, add a little bit more, build it up for the brightest lights. But the first thing I do is establish that. Over here in this section, these are things that are done in the class. I always experiment first for the class to see that will work, so I simplify it for them. Just watercolour pencils, ordinary everyday drawings of ordinary everyday things. And I always look at something as a basic shape. As this rooster here that was just done quickly with ink and a brush with a bit of water, red crayon, that's just a triangle. So if you see things as a basic shape, you don't become overwhelmed with them. So there's all sorts of things here, the humble magpie that you will find in paintings here and there. This is a lovely old place, 200-year-old house at O'Connell, which I was commissioned to do, and the last two things to go on there were those two magpies. Yes, so lovely scenes around Bathurst, winter lights. last light and with the Uniting Church in the background. It's a poor photo, but the painting was very nice. So what I would sort of like to do, so there's, you just start off, in my classes when I'm teaching, you just start off with pencils. Learn to use the pencil so then you can manipulate the paintbrush. So I've tried everything out first to make sure it works for people. I do have a plan because I find that people turn up with lots of expensive equipment and they haven't been shown how to use it, and although they might fluke something occasionally, they really don't know how they did it. So I have a simplified way to do it, and I wouldn't mind just showing you here if that's okay. So can I just do a little pencil sketch?
Great.
I was just looking at, we had that rainy day the other day. I was in my kitchen window which looks down into the garden, and half of the tree was wet, and it's a very old gnarly tree. And it looks a bit like a tortured willow. And I just thought it was spectacular with the stark shading. Now this particular pencil I'm using, I call the magic pencils. I'll just show you so you can do a nice fine line like this, or a heavy one. Or I can do a lovely strong line like this if I want to. And I can use it very dark or anything in between. So I'm just going to show you something very simple, how it works, and I approach everything like this, whether it's a landscape, a still life, or anything in between. So when you're setting up a painting, just say I'm having two objects. It might be, say, an apple and a paper bag. You've got to have a plan so it works. So I never do any deals. I'm just going to do a very light sketch of what a paper bag might look like. And like that, something like that. It might be one of those boxy type paper bags. Now if there was an apple, so you always do the larger thing first, just a very faint outline. And if an apple was to go in there, well, say it was go here. So you judge by the larger thing the size of the second thing, the size of it. So it might be, so you just do something very light like this. I'm just going to grab a rubber. So really light and simple like this. No holding the pencil like you're going to write a letter. You get into trouble doing those things because you get too tied up and too fussy about things too early. So once you've got a basic paper bag shape or whatever it is, a box, it doesn't matter what it is, and it's the right size on your piece of paper or canvas, and you're happy where the placement is, well then you can judge the second thing, whether it's a glass or an apple or whatever it is. But just say, so we do a quick sketch like this. You might put a bit of a core there, have a good look at it, have a look, where is the light coming from? Let's see. So you've got to establish that straight away. So the light's coming from there, and I'm happy with my apple. I would do just lightly, because so I can rub. As soon as I've got something down, I've got something to rub out. I'm just going to do a little shading very quickly. With my paintings, I always do an underpainting, and you could call this a sort of an underdrawing, because after you put in a lot of time, you certainly don't want it to be wrong. Okay. Now a paper bag, they're usually light brown, so I'm just going to do a very quick shading to knock that back from the white paper. Now because I'm only working very lightly, I can easily rub this out, change it. So I'm thinking a paper bag probably around about that tone, but then of course it has lots of crinkly bits and nice little sharp lines. Now if my light's coming from here, this side, if it's got a box, this will be a bit darker. So the light is everything. Once you've got the light, once you've got the shading, you've created your light. Okay. Now paper bags have crinkly bits which are generally sharp. So you get those sharp lines like this on paper bags. And then if the light's coming from there, I'm just going to do a little shading here, depending on how intense the light is and how dark the subject matter is. Now just say for instance this is a dark red apple. The light's coming from here, so I start to do an all over shading. If you go in gung-ho with a dark pencil, you're going to have a lot of mess to rub out, so very lightly. Now I'm just going to darken up that shading a bit, and now I'm going to dark up, if it was a red apple, darken it up and get a little bit of shape. Now at the moment these items look like they're floating mid-air, so what we might do is let's put them on something. So okay, they're on a table now. Now I'm just going to hold the pencil a little bit firmer and just draw in this little core, which will be like that. Darken that up a bit to give it a bit of body. Do a few paper bag lines, which usually go something like that. Paper bag lines are generally very sharp. I'm just going to smooth it out a bit because it is a paper bag. Now, that wouldn't be the only shading on the paper bag. When paper bags are being creased up, you've got to know your subject. You know, if it's a magpie, you have to know how they stand. If it's a paper bag, it's smooth, but it has these sharp creases. So because this bit here is the closest bit to me on the edge, I will make it a bit darker. This side here is a bit further away. If the light's coming from there, it could well be darker inside there. But I don't have a sharp line there because it's further away and I need to give this a little bit of perspective of, it might have a bit of a dip there where the bag's been folded, creased up a lot of times, as this edge is the sharpest, closest to us also. Now the paper bag, sometimes they have handles, a twisty little sort of twisted thing like that. Okay, I'll just rub that bit out there. Sometimes they have handles, sometimes they don't. The good quality ones generally have a handle and they generally twisted paper. And we might have one going up there from that side. So then all you do is add your bits and pieces if you're happy with the layout. Because the paper bag is lighter than the apple, its shading will be lighter too, and as the shading goes away, depending on the angle of the light, that lightness, it will fade away. It's always darkest underneath the subject matter. So a dark red delicious apple will take on a darker shadow, and if it was a white table or something, a light coloured table, I'll darken this up because if it's a Granny Smith it'll be darker there anyway, but it'll certainly be darker there away from the light. It's like the sun at midday is directly overhead. As the sun moves down, the same with the light, you light up your work to get a nice effect. You can lower the light to make the shadows longer. My favourite time of the day is the time of the long shadow at dusk, evening, twilight time. And basically, that's how it's done. Very simple. Keep it simple. I have a plan, the plan works, and it excites people, and you need to be excited if you're going to be an artist. You can't do anything if you're not passionate about it. Yep, so it all starts with a scratch mark. Everything does. Better put an edge on that, I guess. That's how it goes. Does it look like something? I hope so. I hope it looks like a paper bag and an apple. It's all in the twist of their wrist. Out at Flat Rock I use the mauve pastel paper because the beautiful rocks are very mauve, establishing my darkest darks and brightest lights stage 1, and then stage 2 just building up, adding this and that and something else. And then stage 3, the finished. You've got to know how to build up from layers. With pastel, it's thin and darks. Darks done very thin, and building up to lights done really beautifully thick. And on this water scene here in the painting, but the painting was at least this size, you could see the little flies and things and the water things that leaves on the top of the water. So you have to know how to build that up. It's not something you can fluke, that is for sure. Little simple studies like this, just done with anything you happen to have at hand. That was just little felt pens, studying the way galahs look, walk and their attitude. And this is my horse painting series, studying the horses in the paddock and doing little drawings. This is a little funny one I did of the chooks that we used to have here. That was rather fun. Chooks are always good. People love chooks. And this is a painting that was done on a 7-foot long cross-cut saw, a very old saw with old wooden handles on the ends. You can see the curve. That's my photo. And I'm able to do very fine lines and that with a paintbrush because I started off as a ticket writer in Sydney, sign writing and ticket writing and handwriting all the show cards for the big stores. This is a little pen and wash scene, Beggles Feed Barn. I use transparent ink for that. And over here, so this is a lovely finished one, a professional photo of a scene down at the bridle track, which is absolutely beautiful down there. Yeah, those two magpies, they get around. There's quite a few paintings. So up here we've got oil paintings, unfinished ones. Pen and wash, these are done pen and wash with ink out in the paddock. That's how we used to do. We used to go out in the paddock, it wasn't from photos. And it's a lovely, beautiful scenery here. We've got last light at Wiseman's Creek. The last light of the day is my favourite, when the pristine hills out there and the cows settling down in the twilight time, which is so beautiful. This is an early Sunday morning up at the Hen and Chicken Lane in Bathurst. That's an acrylic painting, and this is a local possum. The tree has now gone and possums moved on. I don't use black. I think black is cold and dead. So anything you see that looks like black, it really isn't. This wine bottle, I love traditional stuff. I often set these things up in the studio. There's no black in here, it's just dark purples or chocolate browns and Payne's grey. And I use very few colours in anything. I just interact these colours so you have a harmonious feeling. What else? Oh, this is a very big pastel I did. I came home one Wednesday afternoon. It was in autumn, and I looked up the hill, and all I could see were these gorgeous coloured trees. And so that became a large painting also. So you never stop. Here's some lovely poppies that last year I had hanging out through the front fence. So a little study, but I'm going to put another poppy in there and play that up a little bit. And this is a special thing I did called Spirit of Bathurst. That's how I see Bathurst, and I've painted on that. This is a lovely scene I see from my little parlour room because I'm up high looking towards the mountains downtown. And I did the pen work. I started off and added bits what I thought Bathurst meant to me, and the essence of Bathurst, and the churches, the beautiful river. Who could forget the ducks, and then the lovely street lamps, and well, say no more. And so it goes. We used to have lovely white fantail pigeons, a portrait of my fantail pigeons. So anything is a piece of art. It just depends. Boiled eggs, what a wonderful piece of art. And out of all the things that we've got everything here, we've got acrylic, we've got coloured pencils on black. I've worked out how to get this spectacular look. It's by overlaying it, but you must have white underneath it. You can see the little bit up the top there. I've been experimenting. Yep, and I love fine pen work. As you can see, I can do some very fine lines. Yeah. That about sort of what else is there? This is a very old study, an oil painting when we had the property at Wallachia. I was cooking tea and I set this up on the old radiogram we used to have then and painted it as I was cooking. It's amazing. Yeah, so you do crazy. You've got to be eccentric to be an artist, or I'm sure it won't work. That about sums it up. Oh, I don't particularly like, I've done some, I'll show you some portraits I've done. There's one here of that's Bob from Power, done in pastel. And I make myself do life drawing every now and then, plus some portraiture. It's not my favourite subject, but I think you've got to get outside your comfort zone. Now this was just done on the wrong side of a piece of pastel paper, and it's just, it's some pastel, it's just black ink with a brush, just doing big dark shadows and seeing what would happen with a bit of a scrub of a pastel over the top, and it looks rather dramatic. But I must show you something amazing. If you've got just a moment. Two of my art students from Penrith, I've been teaching all my life and beyond, I think. These are just watercolour studies, watercolour pencils. Very cheap watercolour pencils. You don't have to spend a fortune to be an artist, that is for sure. I want to show you these two portraits because I've done them on Glad Bake paper, straight out of the kitchen, and these are all the things we do in class if people come and learn and do simple subjects they see every day. Because the old Aussie shed is one of the favourite things. Now all the sheds are falling down now, so we really need to have paintings of them. That's a bit of Australiana.